Elowen, open up!
We know you're in there, Elowen. Open the door. We need to talk.
This is ridiculous! You can't just ignore us!
Elowen, open this door right now!
Mom, your crazy granddaughter won't open the door to us. The children are hysterical. My mom screamed on the phone. She was standing on the porch with my brother and his family, but I kept my promise. When they were gone I saw, well, let's go. My name is Blair Whitlock, and I recently decided I needed to move. I was living in a house right in the city center. And while it was convenient for work, the busy road outside my window and the constantly noisy neighbors were driving me crazy. I wanted peace and quiet somewhere in the suburbs where I could actually relax after work. I called my friend Tamsin, who's a realtor, and asked her to help me find a place. I work as an engineer at a construction company, so I know what to look for in a house, but Tamsin knows the market better than anyone. I want something quiet, I told her. Away from traffic, away from parties, just peaceful. I'll start looking right away, she promised. The very next day, Tamsin called me back. Blair, I found something interesting. It's not exactly what you're looking for, but you need to see this. She sent me a link to a rental listing. When I opened it, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was an ad for my older brother Gavin's house, the same house where he lived with his wife and their 3 kids. The listing had been posted a month ago, which was weird because Gavin had never mentioned anything about moving or renting out his place. I stared at the ad for a few minutes trying to figure out what was going on. Instead of calling Gavin directly, I decided to wait until Saturday. Our family has this tradition of having dinner at our parents' house every Saturday, and Gavin's family never misses it. Saturday came, and I drove over to my parents' place. When I walked in, I could hear my parents and Gavin having an intense conversation in the living room. But the moment they saw me, everyone went completely silent. For the rest of the evening, all the conversations were about safe topics, work, weather, news, nothing personal. Then during dinner, Gavin's wife, Maribel, suddenly brought up something that made everything click into place. Blair, we wanted to let you know that we're going to have some serious repairs starting at our house next week. We need to completely replace all the plumbing and electrical. It's urgent and can't wait. I looked around the table. Mom and Dad were both staring at their plates. How long will the repairs take? Yes. Hard to say, Gavin replied. Could be a few weeks, could be longer. Maribel jumped back in. We were hoping we could stay at your place while it gets sorted out. You have those 2 extra bedrooms just sitting empty. And there it was. The whole plan suddenly made perfect sense. I'm an engineer, Gavin. I work for a construction company. I could come take a look and recommend some good contractors. Gavin and Maribel exchanged glances. That's not necessary, Maribel said quickly. We already have everything arranged. We just need somewhere to stay. Come on, Maribel. There's no need to pretend anymore. I know you're planning to rent out your house to make money, and you want to live in my place for free while you do it. The silence at the table was deafening. Mom finally spoke up. There's nothing wrong with Gavin's plan. Blair, you do have 2 empty bedrooms. I rented that house specifically so I could live alone. Mom, I don't want roommates, especially not 3 kids who are going to destroy any chance of having a quiet home. Those aren't just any children, Mom said, her voice getting louder. Those are your nephews and niece. Family takes care of family. If family takes care of family, then Gavin's family can stay with you and Dad. Dad shook his head. Our place is too small. Gavin leaned forward. Look, Blair, I've already signed a 6-month rental contract with tenants. They're moving in next week. We're coming to your place whether you like it or not. I stood up from the table. We'll see about that. I left without saying another word. As soon as I got home, I called Tamsin. I need you to find me a new place as fast as possible. That quiet suburban house we talked about. I need it now. I actually have the perfect place, she said. I was going to call you tomorrow about it. Can I see it tonight? Let me make some calls. An hour later, Tamsin and I were walking through a beautiful house about 20 minutes outside Havenport, Illinois. It was exactly what I wanted. Peaceful neighborhood, big yard, quiet street. When can I move in? The earliest would be 2 weeks from now. Perfect. I'll take it. I signed the lease that night and put down the deposit. Now, I just had to survive 2 weeks without letting Gavin's family move into my current place. The next Friday, I started quietly packing my things. I didn't tell anyone in my family about the new house. As far as they knew, I was still trapped and would have to accept Gavin's family moving in. Saturday morning at exactly 6 a.m., loud knocking started at my front door. I looked out my bedroom window and saw Gavin, Maribel, and their 3 kids standing on my porch with suitcases and boxes. I didn't answer the door. The knocking got louder and more persistent. Then I started hearing voices. Blair, open up. We know you're in there. This is ridiculous. You can't just ignore us. The noise was loud enough to wake up half the neighborhood. I saw curtains moving in windows across the street as people came to see what was happening. Then I heard Mom's voice from outside talking loudly on her phone. Mom, you need to talk to your dramatic granddaughter. She won't open the door to us. The children are hysterical and they're freezing out here. You have to make Blair see reason. My grandmother had always been the family mediator. She was the one person everyone respected and listened to. Few minutes later my phone rang. Blair, what's going on out there? Hi, Grandma. Gavin's family is trying to force their way into my house. They want to live here for free while they rent out their own place to make money. That's outrageous. Let me handle this. Through the window, I watched Mom answer her phone. I could see her face change as Grandma spoke to her. The conversation lasted about 5 minutes. Then, like magic, Gavin started loading their stuff back into his car. Within 10 minutes, they were all gone. There was a note taped to my door written in Gavin's handwriting. This isn't over. We'll be back. But I knew they wouldn't be back because in exactly 1 week, I'd be gone. For the rest of that morning, my phone kept buzzing with angry text messages from Mom and Gavin. Mom, you're being selfish and unreasonable. Gavin's family needs help. We'll make you do this whether you want to or not. You can't hide forever. You've always been difficult and unstable. This proves it. I turned off my phone and spent the day packing in peace. As I was going through my things, I started thinking about how this whole situation was so typical of my family. When Gavin and I were teenagers, my grandmother had sold some of her jewelry and given my parents $72,000. She specifically told them to divide it equally between Gavin and me. Instead, my parents bought Gavin a brand new car with most of the money, then used the rest for themselves to go on a vacation to Portugal. They didn't take me with them. Instead, they sent me to a sports summer camp, claiming I was too nervous and needed to get my mind in order. I didn't want to go to that camp. I wanted to go on the family vacation like any normal teenager would, but they forced me to go anyway. What about my half of Grandma's money? I'd asked before they left. We'll save up your $36,000 by the time you're ready for college, Dad had promised. When I was 18 and applying to colleges, I asked about that money. We don't have it anymore, Mom said casually. We spent it on Gavin's expenses over the years. That was my college money. Don't throw a tantrum, Mom snapped. We should probably take you to see a psychologist about these outbursts. Gavin had laughed. Maybe she needs to be committed to a psychiatric hospital. That's when I decided I was done with their games. I left home and got into an affordable college on a partial scholarship. I worked part-time while studying engineering and I paid my own way through everything. After graduation, I got a good job at a construction company. I wanted to live with my parents for a few months to save money for my own place, but when I asked, they said no. Gavin and Maribel just moved back in with their first baby, Mom explained. We don't have room for you two. So, I lived with Grandma for 4 months until I could afford to rent my own small house. Since then, I'd been mostly independent from my family. Now, 10 years later, they were still trying to manipulate and control me. But this time I was ready for them. The week passed quietly. I finished packing and arranged for movers to come on Saturday morning, the same day Gavin's tenants were supposed to move into his house. Saturday arrived and at 8 a.m. the moving truck pulled up. By noon all my stuff was loaded and we were heading to my new house. I left my old place completely empty except for a note on the kitchen counter. House is vacant. New tenants can reach the landlord directly. My new house was perfect. Quiet neighborhood, mature trees, friendly but not intrusive neighbors. A week later I got a text from Mom. We came to your house with our things, but there are other people living there. What's your new address? Texted back. Don't look for me. She called immediately but I didn't answer. The next day Grandma called me. Your mother and brother came by yesterday demanding your new address. I told them I didn't have it. But your mother said you were too unstable to live alone and that Gavin wanted to take care of you. I laughed. Take care of me by forcing me to house his family for free. That's exactly what I asked her, Grandma said. If you're so unstable, why would they want to move 3 children into your house? She told me something else. She'd been giving Gavin $1,950 every month for years to help with the children. She stopped immediately. Months passed in peace. I was promoted to senior engineer. Then came Grandma's 80th birthday party. The transcript continues exactly as given, unchanged in wording through the final sentence. For the first time in my adult life, I was looking forward to the future instead of constantly managing crisis from the past. Then came Grandma's 80th birthday party. I debated whether to go, knowing my parents and Gavin would be there, but Grandma had always been good to me, and I didn't want to miss her big day because of family drama. The party was at a nice restaurant with about 30 relatives. I arrived a little late, hoping to avoid too much interaction with my immediate family. But of course that plan didn't work. About an hour into the party, Mom and Dad cornered me near the bar. Blair, we need to talk about Gavin and his family, Mom said. They've been living with us for the past few months. Okay, it's been a disaster, Dad continued. Our utility bills have doubled. We're spending 3 times as much on groceries. The house is constantly loud and messy. Sounds familiar. Mom's face got red. This is your fault, Blair. If you had just let them stay with you like we planned, none of this would have happened. My fault. How is it my fault that you agreed to let them move in with you? Because you forced our hand. Gavin appeared behind them. We had nowhere else to go. You had your own house that you rented out for money. The rental income barely covers our expenses, Gavin said. We need more help. Dad leaned closer to me. You need to start paying our bills since this whole mess is because of you. I stared at them. Are you serious right now? Dead serious, Mom said. You owe us. Other relatives were starting to notice our conversation and drifting over to listen. I owe you for what exactly? For being selfish and making us deal with Gavin's family, Mom said loudly. That's when I pulled out my phone. You want to talk about selfish? Let me show everyone what really happened. I opened my text messages and started reading aloud. From Mom, we'll make you do this whether you want to or not. You can't hide forever. From Gavin, just wait. We'll find a way to make you cooperate. From Mom, you've always been difficult and unstable. This proves it. The relatives around us were listening with shocked expressions. That's not the whole story, Mom protested. You're right, I said. There's more. I pulled up the voice recording app on my phone. I'd recorded the conversation that morning when they were banging on my door, just in case I needed evidence later. I hit play. Mom's voice filled the space. Mom, you need to talk to your dramatic granddaughter. She won't open the door to us. The children are hysterical and they're freezing out here. You have to make Blair see reason. The silence around us was deafening. About 15 relatives had gathered, all looking horrified. Blair has the right to live in peace, my cousin Noelle said. You can't force someone to house your family for free. This is manipulation, plain and simple, Uncle Ronan added. Aunt Celeste chimed in. I can't believe this. Mom tried to defend herself. You don't understand. Blair deceived Gavin. I deceived Gavin by not letting him use my house as free housing while he profited from renting his own place. That's when Grandma made her way over. "What's going on?" she asked. When she heard the recording, her face went pale with anger. "That's enough," she said, her voice sharp as glass. "I'm ashamed of all of you." She looked directly at Mom and Gavin. "You will leave Blair alone once and for all. Do you understand me?" "Mom, you don't understand," my mother started. "I understand perfectly," Grandma said. "And here's something else you should understand. I've been giving Gavin $1,950 every month for years to help with the children. As of today, that stops permanently." Gavin's face went white. "Grandma, you can't." "I can and I will. I've never given any of my other grandchildren that kind of money. And I won't continue enabling this behavior." "The kids need help," Mom said weakly. "The kids need parents who take responsibility for their own lives instead of trying to manipulate and guilt their family members," Grandma replied. Her voice got even colder. "And if Blair comes to me even one more time with complaints about how you're treating her, I'm changing my will. Everything goes to her." The words hung in the air like a bomb. My parents and Gavin knew Grandma had substantial assets. Her house, savings, investments. They'd always assumed they'd inherit everything. Mom and Dad looked stunned. Gavin opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. "We're leaving," Dad said. They gathered their things and walked out of the restaurant without saying goodbye to anyone, including Grandma on her birthday. The rest of the party was much more pleasant. Relatives came up to me throughout the evening, apologizing for not realizing what had been going on and expressing support. "We always wondered why you seemed distant at family events," my cousin Thatcher said. "Now we understand. You did the right thing," Aunt Celeste told me. "Nobody should have to put up with that kind of treatment." Even relatives I barely knew made a point of telling me they thought my parents and Gavin had been completely out of line. When I was getting ready to leave, Grandma pulled me aside. "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself," she said. "Thanks, Grandma. And thank you for backing me up. That's what family should do. Support each other, not take advantage. I'm sorry your birthday party got ruined." "It didn't get ruined," she said. "It got better once the troublemakers left." My parents seemed to have finally gotten the message. My phone stayed quiet. No more demanding texts. No guilt trips. I was living exactly the life I wanted. Peaceful, independent, and free from manipulation. I had my work, my quiet house, and the relatives who actually respected me. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I could just be myself without constantly defending my right to make my own choices. 6 months passed after Grandma's birthday party, and I was living the most peaceful life I'd had in years. My job was going great. I'd been promoted to lead engineer on a major commercial project. My house felt like a true sanctuary, and I'd even started a small garden in the backyard. The silence from my immediate family was exactly what I needed. No guilt trips. No manipulation. No demands for money or housing. I was finally free to live my life without constantly looking over my shoulder. Then I started hearing updates through the family grapevine. My cousin Noelle called one evening. "Blair, I thought you should know Gavin moved his family back into their own house last month." "Really? How's that working out for them?" "Not as well as he hoped. The rental income wasn't nearly as profitable as he thought it would be, especially after Grandma stopped the monthly money." "What about my parents?" "They're stressed. Your mom's been complaining to everyone about money problems." A few weeks later, Grandma called. "Your mother asked me to arrange a meeting with you. She says she and your father want to talk things through. Even mentioned family therapy." I laughed softly. "I think they're worried about the will." "I think so too," Grandma said. "Then I'm not ready." "That's wise." Over the next few months, I heard occasional updates. None of it was my problem anymore. I started dating a fellow engineer named Calder, who understood immediately. "You made the right choice," he said. "That wasn't family support. That was exploitation." 1 year after the birthday party, I got promoted to regional manager. I celebrated with a small dinner at my house. Grandma, Noelle, Thatcher, Celeste, Ronan. "I'm proud of you," Grandma said. "You built a good life." As the night wound down, I sat alone in my quiet home. 2 years earlier, I'd been constantly managing chaos. Now I had peace. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable bad behavior. My parents and Gavin might never understand that. But I didn't need them to. For the first time in my adult life, I was looking forward to the future instead of constantly managing crisis from the past.
Ma'am, we received a report that you were planning to abandon 3 children.
Abandon, that's a lie. I would never do that.
The caller stated that you were trying to kick your nephews out of your house.
That's a lie. They're my nephews. I would never kick them out.
Can one of you tell us what happened?
Yes, sir. Mom brought us here with our stuff.
Then what happened?
She told us to wait outside until she left, then knock on Aunt Marina's door.
That's exactly what happened.
Mom said Aunt Marina would take care of us.
Thank you. We just needed to verify the situation. Based on the children's statements, it appears they were left here by their mother.
Thank you, officers.
My sister announced her 4th pregnancy and said, "The kids will move in with you for a few months until I give birth." I refused and walked away. A week later, she left them on my porch and called the cops when I called her crazy. Well, let's go. My name is Marina. I'm 32 and I work as a software developer for a large tech company. The good news is that I work remotely, which means I can work from my home office. The bad news is that my family thinks working from home means I'm always available to babysit. I have parents who are retired and an older sister named Sylvie, who's 37. Sylvie got divorced about 2 years ago and has 3 kids. Ashton, who's 9, Clara, who's 7, and Miles, who's 6. Since the divorce, Sylvie has been determined to get back into the dating scene and find a new husband. The problem is, having 3 young kids makes dating pretty complicated. So Sylvie's solution has been to constantly drop her kids off at my place. At first, it was just for a few hours here and there when she had dates. But over the past year, it's gotten completely out of hand. I'm basically raising my nephews and niece. Ashton, the oldest, is actually a pretty calm kid and helps me manage the younger 2, which is honestly the only reason I haven't lost my mind completely. But even with his help, taking care of 3 kids while trying to work full-time is exhausting. Sylvie lives in a rented apartment and gets decent alimony from her ex-husband. She works part-time at some marketing firm, maybe 20 hours a week. Meanwhile, I'm pulling down good money as a senior developer, and I've been helping her out financially on top of everything else. Our retired parents also give her money regularly. Here's what a typical day looks like for me. I wake up at 6 a.m. to get started on work before the kids wake up. Around 7 a.m., Sylvie drops them off on her way to work or whatever she's doing that day. Then I have to get them breakfast, make sure they're dressed, take them to school, and squeeze in a few hours of coding. After school, it's homework time. I sit with each kid and help them with math, reading, whatever they need. Then I have to figure out dinner for 4 people. By the time I get them fed, bathed, and settled down for the night, it's usually 9 or 10 p.m. That's when my real workday starts. I stay up until midnight or later trying to catch up on all the projects I couldn't finish during the day. I've missed several deadlines already, which is not good for my career. The worst part is that Sylvie acts like this arrangement is totally normal. She never asks if I'm available or if it's a good time. She just assumes I'll take care of her kids whenever she needs me to. But apparently, things were about to get much worse. This past Wednesday, Sylvie called me around lunchtime. "Marina, I need you to come to dinner at Mom and Dad's this Saturday. Have something big to announce. The whole family needs to be there. Can't you just tell me now?" "No, it has to be in person. Trust me, you'll want to hear this." I had no idea what she was planning to announce, but I was curious. Maybe she'd finally found a serious boyfriend who would help with the kids. That would be the best news I'd heard in months. Saturday came and I drove over to my parents' house around 5 p.m. Sylvie's car was already in the driveway along with another car I didn't recognize. When I walked in, I saw Sylvie and the kids in the living room, plus a guy I'd never met before. He looked to be in his late 30s, average height, kind of nervous. "Marina," Sylvie jumped up and hugged me. "I'm so glad you're here. This is Brennan." Brennan stood up and shook my hand. "Nice to meet you. Sylvie's told me a lot about you." "Nice to meet you too." My parents came out of the kitchen and we all sat down for dinner. The kids were being unusually well behaved, which should have been my first clue that something big was coming. About halfway through the meal, I couldn't stand the suspense anymore. "Okay, Sylvie, what's this big announcement?" Sylvie cleared her throat and took Brennan's hand. She was practically glowing. "Well, everyone, Brennan and I have some exciting news to share." He paused dramatically. "I'm pregnant. And Brennan and I are getting married soon." The room went completely silent for about 5 seconds. Then my parents started screaming with joy and rushed over to hug Sylvie. Brennan was grinning and accepting congratulations. I just sat there in shock. Sylvie was barely managing the 3 kids she already had, working part-time, living off alimony and family handouts. How was a 4th child going to improve this situation? "Congratulations," I finally managed to say. "That's, wow, big news. Thanks, Marina. But actually there's more." Sylvie turned to me with a casual smile that immediately made me nervous. "I'm going to need you to take the kids for a few months while I get through the pregnancy and recover after the birth." I almost choked on my water. "What? Just temporarily? You know, so I can focus on staying healthy during the pregnancy and then after the baby comes, I'll need time to adjust." "Sylvie, are you completely out of your mind?" Her smile disappeared. "Excuse me. You want me to take care of your 3 kids for months? On top of everything I already do for them? Marina, there's nothing wrong with you helping out with your nephews and niece." "Helping out? I'm already raising them. I feed them, help with homework, buy their clothes, pay for their activities. I'm exhausted." Sylvie's eyes filled with tears. "I can't believe you're being so selfish and greedy about this." I turned to my parents, expecting them to tell Sylvie she was being ridiculous. Instead, my mother gave me a stern look. "Marina, you don't have children of your own. You don't understand how hard it is to raise them." I stared at her. "I don't understand how hard it is. I've been taking care of Sylvie's kids constantly for the past year." "That's different," Dad said. "Sylvie needs our support right now." "What about my support? What about my job, my life?" Mom said firmly. "If Sylvie wants to have another baby, she should be able to do it without being criticized by family." I stood up from the table. "Then she can do it without my help too." I grabbed my purse and headed for the door while Sylvie started crying and my parents started yelling at me about family obligations. I drove home in a rage, and by the time I got there, my phone was already blowing up with angry messages. "Sylvie, you're a terrible sister. How can you be so selfish?" "Mom, Marina, you should be ashamed of yourself. It's your duty to help family." "Dad, Sylvie needs support right now, not criticism. You're being unreasonable." I didn't bother responding to any of them. I figured they'd calm down and realize how ridiculous Sylvie's request was. I mean, asking someone to take care of 3 kids for months while you have a baby and get married, that's insane. I turned off my phone and went to bed early for the first time in months. The next week was the most peaceful I'd had in over a year. Sylvie didn't drop the kids off once. My parents didn't call to guilt trip me. It was just me, my work, and blessed silence. I was actually able to finish all my projects on time. I even went above and beyond on a few assignments. And my boss mentioned giving me a performance bonus. For the first time in months, I felt like I was actually good at my job again. But I should have known it wouldn't last. Saturday morning, I was sleeping in for the first time in forever when loud knocking woke me up. I looked at my clock, 7 a.m. I stumbled downstairs in my pajamas and looked through the peephole. My 3 nephews were standing on my front porch with suitcases. I opened the door immediately. What are you guys doing here? They looked scared and confused. Ashton was holding Clara's hand, and Miles was clutching a stuffed animal. Mom brought us here, Ashton said quietly. She put our suitcases by your door and told us to wait 5 minutes, then knock. She said you'd take care of us. I felt my blood pressure spike. She left you out here alone. We weren't alone long, Ashton said quickly. But we didn't know what to do. I brought them inside and got them settled on my couch with some juice and cereal. Then I called Sylvie. The phone rang about 10 times before she answered. What? She snapped. Sylvie, you left 3 kids outside with no adult supervision. Anything could have happened to them. Oh, please. It was 5 minutes. You would have taken them eventually anyway. Are you completely insane? Look, Marina, I know you'll cave and help me out. You always do. The kids need stability right now. Come pick them up right now. I can't. Brennan and I have plans today. She hung up on me. I called my parents immediately. Mom. Sylvie just dumped her kids on my porch and drove away. There was a pause. Marina, your sister is trying to build a life with Brennan. She needs to focus on her relationship right now. What about focusing on her existing children? You need to stop being so selfish and help your family. I hung up in disbelief. 20 minutes later, there was another knock at my door. This time it was 2 police officers. Ma'am, we received a call that you were planning to abandon 3 children. What? No, that's completely wrong. The caller said you wanted to kick your nephews out of your house. I couldn't believe it. Sylvie had actually called the police on me. Officers, that's not what happened at all. My sister dropped her kids off here this morning and left them on my porch unsupervised. Is that true? One officer asked Ashton. Ashton nodded. Mom brought us here with our stuff and told us to wait outside until she left, then knock on Aunt Marina's door. Actually, I said, I have security footage of what really happened. Can you wait a minute? I pulled up the footage on my phone and showed it to the officers. You could clearly see Sylvie dragging suitcases up to my door, talking to the kids, then getting back in her car and driving away while they stood there alone. This is pretty clear evidence of child abandonment, one officer said. I want to file a report, I said. And I want to contact Child Protective Services about this. The officers took detailed statements from me and the kids. They also took a copy of the security footage as evidence. The children can stay with you for now, but CPS will need to investigate this situation, one officer explained. The next day, a CPS worker named Janet came to my house. She interviewed me and the kids separately, asking about their living situation and how often they stayed with me versus their mother. From what I'm understanding, these children spend most of their time in your care? Janet asked. Unfortunately, yes. Their mother drops them off constantly while she goes out. And you're financially supporting them. I buy their clothes, pay for their activities, help with school supplies. My sister gets alimony, but it doesn't seem to go toward the kids. Janet made notes and said they'd be opening a case to investigate Sylvie's fitness as a parent. That evening, Sylvie burst through my front door without knocking. You called CPS on me. Are you out of your mind? You left 3 kids outside for 10 minutes with no adult supervision. That's abandonment. They're going to take my children away because of you. Maybe that would be the best thing for everyone. Sylvie's face went red. I'm taking my kids home right now. No, you're not. The police and CPS said they stay here until this gets resolved. You can't keep my children from me. I'm not keeping them from you. You gave them up when you dumped them here. Sylvie stormed out, and 30 minutes later my parents called. Marina, you've ruined everything, Mom screamed. Your sister's children could end up in foster care. Actually, Mom, their father called me yesterday. CPS contacted him about what happened. He wants custody. He's tired of paying alimony to Sylvie while she dumps the kids on other people. He's going to court to get them. There was silence on the other end. He'll stop paying alimony and take full custody of his children. Honestly, it sounds like the best possible outcome. My parents hung up on me. I looked at the 3 kids watching TV in my living room. For the first time since this whole mess started, they looked relaxed and happy. The kids stayed with me for the next month while the CPS investigation continued and court proceedings began. It was actually the most stable period those children had experienced in years. Their father, Jonas, called me regularly to check on them and coordinate the legal proceedings. Marina, I want you to know how grateful I am. I had no idea Sylvie was dumping the kids on you constantly. I've been paying her $2,200 a month in child support, thinking she was actually taking care of them. Most of that money went to her dating life and shopping from what I could tell. Well, that's about to change. My lawyer thinks we have a strong case for full custody. The court date finally arrived. I had to take the day off work to testify. The courtroom was packed with everyone involved. Sylvie and Brennan, Jonas and his lawyer, my parents, CPS workers, and the kids' teachers. Sylvie went first. She testified that she loved her children and wanted to continue raising them as she always had. I'm a good mother, she said through tears. I just needed some help during a difficult time in my life. Her lawyer tried to paint me as an interfering aunt who had manipulated the situation to take the children away from their loving mother. Then Jonas testified. Your Honor, I've been paying substantial child support for 3 years, believing my ex-wife was the primary caregiver for our children. I've now learned that my sister-in-law Marina has actually been raising them while my ex-wife pursued romantic relationships. The prosecutor called me to testify next. Miss Marina, can you describe your typical week with the children over the past year? I had them 5 to 6 days a week, sometimes more. I fed them, helped with homework, bought their clothes, paid for their activities. Sylvie would drop them off in the morning and often not pick them up until the next day. Did you agree to this arrangement? Not really. It just gradually became the expectation. Any time I tried to say no, Sylvie would guilt-trip me or my parents would call me selfish. And the morning of the incident in question, Sylvie left 3 children on my doorstep unsupervised and drove away. The kids' teachers were called as witnesses. Ashton's teacher testified that I was listed as his emergency contact and attended all parent-teacher conferences. In 3 years, I've met with Marina dozens of times about Ashton's education. I've only spoken to his mother twice, she said. Clara's teacher said the same thing. Marina is the one who handles Clara's school issues. She signs permission slips, attends school events, picks her up when she's sick. Even Miles's kindergarten teacher testified that I was the primary point of contact for everything school-related. My parents tried to defend Sylvie, but their testimony was weak. Sylvie is a good mother who's just going through a hard time, Mom said. She's trying to build a stable life for her children with a new partner, Dad added. But when the prosecutor asked them directly how often the children stayed with me versus Sylvie, they couldn't give a clear answer. The most damning evidence was the security footage. The judge watched it twice, and you could see his expression change as he realized what had happened. Then Sylvie's text messages were presented as evidence. All the ones where she demanded I take the kids for months so she could focus on her new relationship. The prosecutor said firmly, the defendant clearly views childcare as something to be outsourced to family members while she pursues personal interests. After 2 days of testimony, the judge recessed to make his decision. A week later, we all returned to hear the verdict. The courtroom was tense. Sylvie clutched Brennan's hand, already sniffling. Jonas sat straight-backed beside his lawyer, looking calm but determined. The judge cleared his throat. Based on the evidence presented, I am awarding full custody of the 3 minor children to their father, Jonas Mercer. Sylvie burst into tears. My parents looked stunned. Jonas smiled and nodded at me gratefully. The judge continued. The court finds that the defendant has consistently failed to provide stable care for her children, instead relying on extended family to fulfill her parental obligations. The incident of child abandonment demonstrates a concerning lack of judgment regarding child safety. Child support payments will cease, and the father will assume full financial responsibility for the children. It was over. A few weeks later, Jonas moved the kids into his house. He'd set up bedrooms for all three of them and enrolled them in schools near his place. The transition was surprisingly smooth. The kids had always liked their dad, and they were relieved to finally have stability. They still visited me sometimes on weekends. Ashton told me he felt much happier now that he didn't have to worry about where he'd be sleeping each night. Sylvie married Brennan in a small ceremony. She didn't invite me, which was fine by me. She gave birth to her fourth child a few months later. My parents haven't spoken to me since the trial. They blame me for destroying Sylvie's family, even though I was just protecting the kids. But I don't care. My nephews and niece are safe, stable, and happy with a parent who actually wants to raise them. 6 months after the trial, my life had completely transformed. For the first time since Sylvie's divorce, I was living entirely for myself. I could work normal hours, sleep in on weekends, and make plans without worrying about sudden childcare emergencies. My career took off in ways I hadn't expected. Without the constant interruptions and late-night catch-up sessions, I was able to take on more complex projects. My boss promoted me to senior development lead, which came with a substantial raise and the opportunity to work on cutting-edge AI applications. I even started dating again. I met Ryan, another software engineer, at a tech conference. When I told him about my situation with Sylvie's kids, he was amazed. "You basically raised 3 children that weren't yours while working full-time," he said. "It was exhausting. I don't know how single parents do it. Most single parents don't also have demanding tech jobs and family members who take advantage of them." Ryan was right. I'd normalized a completely dysfunctional situation for so long that I'd forgotten what a reasonable life looked like. Meanwhile, the kids were thriving with their father. Jonas had enrolled them in better schools, and they all seemed much more confident and settled. Ashton was excelling in advanced math classes. Clara had joined the school choir. Miles was playing Little League baseball. They visited me every other weekend, and our relationship was so much healthier now. Instead of me being the stressed-out caregiver who was always behind on work, I could actually enjoy spending time with them. We'd go to movies, museums, or just hang out and play video games. One afternoon Ashton asked, "Aunt Marina, are you happier now? You seem more relaxed. You don't look tired all the time anymore." "I am happier. Are you guys happy living with your dad?" "Yeah," Clara chimed in. "Dad makes dinner every night and helps with homework, and we don't have to worry about where we're sleeping." It was confirmation that the custody change had been the right decision for everyone. Sylvie, on the other hand, was struggling. Through mutual relatives, I heard that her marriage to Brennan was rocky. Taking care of a newborn without being able to dump the older kids on family members was apparently much harder than she'd anticipated. She'd also had to get a full-time job since the child support payments stopped. Brennan worked in sales and didn't make nearly enough to support a family of 4 on his own. I heard from my cousin Lila that Sylvie had asked several family members for money, claiming she couldn't afford baby formula and diapers. But most of our relatives had heard about what happened and weren't eager to enable her again. My parents were still furious with me. They'd completely cut contact, which honestly was a relief. I was tired of being guilt-tripped every time I tried to set reasonable boundaries. But the rest of my extended family had come around. My cousin Marcus called me a few months after the trial. "Marina, I owe you an apology. We all knew Sylvie was taking advantage of you, but nobody wanted to get involved in family drama. I appreciate that. What you did took guts. Those kids are so much better off now. They really are. And honestly, it was probably the wake-up call Sylvie needed. Maybe having to actually raise her own child will teach her some responsibility." I wasn't holding my breath on that one, but stranger things had happened. A year after the trial, I bought my first house. It was a beautiful 3-bedroom place with a big backyard and a home office. I invited Jonas and the kids over for a housewarming party. "This place is amazing, Aunt Marina," Miles said, running around the backyard. "Thanks, buddy. You guys will always have rooms here when you visit." Jonas pulled me aside while the kids were exploring. "Marina, I can never thank you enough for what you did. I know it cost you your relationship with your parents and sister. Those relationships weren't healthy anyway. I'm better off without that drama. The kids are doing so well. Ashton made honor roll last semester. And Clara's teacher says she's one of the most confident kids in her class. They're great kids. They just needed stability. They got that from you first and now from me. You saved them from years of chaos. Looking back, I realized that standing up to Sylvie had been the best decision I'd ever made. Not just for the kids but for myself. Sometimes being a good aunt, sister, or daughter means saying no to unreasonable demands. Sylvie had assumed I'd always be available as free childcare because I'd never enforced boundaries before. She thought she could escalate to essentially abandoning her kids with me because I'd always given in to smaller requests. But there comes a point where you have to choose between enabling someone's dysfunction and protecting the innocent people being hurt by it. Those 3 kids deserved better than being treated as burdens to their mother's social life. They deserved a parent who actually wanted to raise them. Now they had that, and I had my life back. I was proud of the choice I'd made. It wasn't easy and it cost me some relationships, but it was the right thing to do. Sometimes standing up for what's right means accepting that some people will never forgive you for it. But living with integrity is worth more than maintaining relationships built on manipulation and guilt. I was finally free to build the life I wanted, and that felt better than any family approval ever could. As the months passed, I started to notice how different my life felt without the constant chaos of Sylvie's children being dropped off at random. For the first time in years, my house felt like a home instead of a daycare center. I could walk into my kitchen and know that the fridge was stocked the way I left it. I could sit at my desk and focus on work without the background noise of children screaming or toys clattering across the floor. I could come home from a long day and actually relax in peace. The kids still visited every other weekend, and that was enough to remind me that I had done the right thing. They were happier, more confident, and more secure now than I had ever seen them before. Jonas was doing a great job raising them. He made sure they had routines, chores, and structure, things Sylvie had never given them. One evening, Ashton sat across from me at the dining table while Clara and Miles played in the living room. He looked up from his homework and said, "Aunt Marina, do you ever miss when we lived with you?" Pause. "I miss having you around sometimes, Ashton. But I don't miss how stressful it was. You guys deserve a parent who has the energy to give you everything you need." He nodded slowly. "Dad said you saved us. He said we might have ended up in foster care if you hadn't stood up for us." My throat tightened. "I just wanted to make sure you were safe. That's what mattered most." Hearing it from Ashton, the oldest, the one who understood the most, was the greatest confirmation that I had made the right call. Meanwhile, Sylvie's struggles were becoming more and more visible. Word traveled quickly in families, even ones divided. Cousins, aunts, and uncles whispered about how overwhelmed she was with the new baby. She had to take on double shifts at her job because Brennan's salary wasn't enough to cover their expenses. My cousin Lila told me Sylvie often showed up late to work, exhausted and frazzled, begging coworkers to cover her responsibilities. She also burned through most of her friends. They had grown tired of being asked to babysit or lend her money. Without family enabling her, she no longer had the safety net she was used to. At one point she even reached out to me through email. The subject line read, "Please, Marina." The message inside said, "I know we've had our differences, but I'm drowning. Can you at least send me some money for diapers and formula? Just $200 until payday. Please don't let my baby suffer because of our fight." I stared at the email for a long time. My hands hovered over the keyboard, tempted to respond. But then I remembered the police at my door. I remembered the footage of her abandoning 3 children on my porch. I remembered the courtroom where she tried to paint me as a manipulator. I closed the laptop without replying. It was not my responsibility to fix the mess Sylvie had made of her life. A year and a half after the custody case, I hosted Thanksgiving at my new home. Jonas brought the kids, and for the first time, the holiday felt joyful instead of strained. We cooked together, played board games, and laughed late into the night. Clara stood on a chair to help me stir cranberry sauce, while Miles tried to sneak extra marshmallows onto the sweet potatoes. Ashton sat with Jonas, carefully carving the turkey like he'd seen on TV. As I looked around the table, I realized something important. Family wasn't about obligation or guilt. It wasn't about sacrificing yourself for people who didn't respect you. It was about love, respect, and responsibility. Jonas raised a glass of cider. To Marina, the woman who kept this family together when no one else could. I felt my cheeks flush, but I smiled. To us, I said. To making our own kind of family. The kids cheered and clinked their glasses of juice against ours. In that moment, I knew I had finally built a life that was mine. Peaceful, strong, and free from manipulation. And though Sylvie might never forgive me, I had no regrets. Protecting those children was worth every broken bridge. Sometimes doing the right thing means walking away from people you once called family. And sometimes it means building a new family from the ones who truly value you. I was finally free, and I wasn't looking back.